everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bob Rohrlack with the Tampa Bay Chamber, and we appreciate you joining us for today's webinar. Today, we're going to talk through some of the things you need to take into consideration as we're all dealing with a stressful time, working through the shelter-at-home policies and strategies. But as you manage your business and look to have your business continue to operate now and succeed when things start to work back to the normal business practice, we want to offer some tips, ideas, and just things you should be thinking about as you're going through that process. And that's the focus for today's webinar. We know that many organizations have closed temporarily without an estimate of when they will be able to reopen. And we hope we can help you with that process and think through that. We put today's webinar together working with our Memorandum of Understanding partner organizations, and they are the Greater Brandon Chamber, the Plant City Chamber, the Greater Riverview Chamber, the Indo-US Chamber, the North Tampa Bay Chamber, the South Tampa Chamber, the Tampa Bay LGBT Chamber, the Tampa Downtown Partnership, the Uptown Chamber, the West Shore Alliance, and the Ybor Chamber. And we want to thank all of our partners for working with us to promote this event and strategize how we all can be working together to support commerce. That's what's going to get people back being employed, is how we can support and strengthen our commerce locally. Now, today we have three great panelists to talk with you. I'm going to introduce them and then we'll get straight to the questions. The first is Arnie Bellini with the Bellini Foundation. An entrepreneurial pioneer, Arnie Bellini's work defined and scaled the technology industry's $213 billion managed services segment. In 1982, he and his brother David co-founded an IT support system in Tampa, ConnectWise. Over the next 4 decades, ConnectWise created technology and business platforms and revolutionized IT support and managed services. In 2019, ConnectWise sold for $1.4 billion. Arnie is widely known as a leader who drives the channel agenda. And in 2014, he was named Florida's Entrepreneur of the Year. Next is Maryann, the co-proprietor and owner of Mise. Maryann is also the 2020 chair for the Tampa Bay Chamber. Maryann has spent her lifetime in the restaurant industry, beginning her career in her parents' restaurant in Detroit as a busgirl. A passionate advocate for independent businesses, Maryann established Mise in 1986 and helped to introduce new American cuisine to Tampa Bay. Mise en Place Hospitality Group expanded over the years with additions of Cafe by Mise en Place, located at Tampa International Airport, Montados at Sparkman's Wharf, and a boutique hotel property, the Berkeley Beach Club in Pasagrille. Last but certainly not least is Scott Riley of the Riley Education Foundation. Scott co-founded both Parker Communications Network, Inc., a satellite-based monitor system distributing commercials to large grocery chains throughout the country, and In-Store Media, which worked with major grocers to merchandise their private label products through alliances with national customers. Scott also was owner and CEO and on the directors for FinTech, one of the largest alcohol payment companies, processing over $30 billion in payments annually. FinTech was a U.S. Chamber of Commerce Business of the Year winner for the entire country, nominated by the Tampa Bay Chamber after he won it for our organization. Scott and his family began the Riley Education Foundation to work with great organizations in order to provide educational opportunities for underprivileged children. So panelists, thank you all very much for being here today. We appreciate your time. So let's get to the questions. We included a survey for those that registered for this webinar to see what their biggest concerns are right now. And we saw 2 themes emerge from that. The first one, how do we keep the economy from suffering long-term? Now, thinking regionally here, what do you think are some of the things we can be working on as a region to support our economy? And I'll open it up to whoever would like to take that first. Scott, why don't you go first on that? Oh, go ahead, Maryann.
Well, I think that You know, I think that as a small business person, I can certainly add that perspective to our conversation today. And I think, you know, we often cite all of the statistics about how small business is the backbone and the engine of our economy. And so I think that one of the things that we can do is make sure that we are really taking their perspective and the perspective of small business now as we make plans going forward, and that we really pay attention to that, which is sometimes difficult to do because small businesses are small businesses, which means there's many of them. They're across different sectors. They're often very engaged, particularly at a time like this, in their own businesses, keeping things going day to day. So the opportunity to make sure that we reach out and have real conversations with small business, and that those small businesses have a moment to lift their heads up and engage in those conversations, so that we make the kind of decisions and pay attention to those things and fuel that engine of our economy.
Good.
Yeah, I'd like to add,
Arnie?
you know, this is, and everyone said it, but this is changing history, right? History's bent. I mean, the curve of the future is now different. I would say this is an opportunity. So anytime there's any massive change, there's lots of opportunity. So instead of thinking about, wow, I just lost 2 months worth of revenue, try to think proactively, try to think about how can I make my business better when it comes back? How can I be on that curve, that bend in history here, so that I'm on the right trajectory going forward? And what I mean by that is, for instance, if you're, and Maryann's a perfect example. If you're a restaurant, you know, you want to make sure that you're thinking, how can I make my patrons really comfortable now? You know, what's going to make them feel like they're comfortable? This is safe. They can come back. So just thinking through this, I think there's opportunities. You are always going to compete regardless. So think about it that way. If you can compete better in this new world, you're going to survive. The other thing I'll say is that, you know, we have a $22 trillion hole in the worldwide economy, and someone's got to fill the hole. So here in the United States, it's going to end up being about a $10 trillion hole. The government just put in $2 trillion. That's great. The rest of it's going to come from us and lost profits, our colleagues and employees with lost wages. I think we'll get through this. I think there's a lot of opportunity on the other side. So don't focus so much on the hole and how it's going to get filled, because it will get filled. The good news is, and I'd say this, the good news is because this was a worldwide event, everyone got hit about the same. Some will come out better, some will come out worse, but the developing countries are the ones that are going to hurt more than us. And I feel sorry for them. It's the rich countries like the United States and other rich countries that will be able to get through this. So I would say for you in the small business area, stay very optimistic. There's a lot of opportunity, and see if you can find that.
Let me just pick up where Maryann already said that. You know, this is a great opportunity. It doesn't sound like it when you're sitting there and you've just lost 2 months of revenue. But bottom line is, if you look at history, all the great disruptions of the world, at the end, there comes out winners and there comes out losers. And if you focus on the things that you need to focus on getting better for the future, and you keep that thing that has kept, the reason everybody on this telecast listening right now, they're successful business people, or they wouldn't have built their own business. And all the same principles that you use to get where you're at, you have to use it now and become even better. We've been through 9/11, 2008, all those things. I've been close to bankruptcy twice in a couple other companies. But the key thing I'm telling small people, you don't have to do this alone. You have people like the Chamber of Commerce, but more importantly, every one of you are going to have to change. Every business is going to have to change. The hospitality, restaurant industry, more than most. But they're going to have to change the way they do business. But their product will still be in demand. You just have to figure out how to communicate what you do, how you are reaching out at the new norm, and how you can deliver those services. And there's a big group that can help you. And sometimes we overlook this. Everybody that you write a check to, a vendor, whether it's a legal firm, insurance firm, product services, software firm, food delivery firm, distribution firm, You need to talk to them on a daily basis. And you need to say, I need help. Twice in my career, when I've almost gone bankrupt, I reached out to a vendor. Those vendors do not want you to go out of business because they're out of business. They can be a source for finance. I got there a couple people to lend me some loans a couple times, got me through the tough period of time. I switched it to an equity position. One of them ended up buying the company at the end of the day. So think outside the box. You know, there's going to be winners, there's going to be losers. And to be a winner, you've got to use all those wonderful tools that you've done to get where you're at today as entrepreneurs. Everybody that has their own business is an entrepreneur. And you have to get to those people. But use the closest people you have. And the more you learn, the more you earn. Read everything you possibly can, nationally, locally, what's happening, what works, what doesn't work, how it can apply to you. But don't forget the people that you've been writing checks to. Meet with them every week. Find out which one of your customers is doing good, which ones are, and even reach out to possible competitors that you can work with that might have a strength, and you might be some consolidation policy. But nothing is off the table. You're going to survive.
Good, Scott. Thank you. Maryann, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, you know, this is spoken like true entrepreneurs, those two gentlemen, and that you see, no matter what you see, whether it's a good time or a bad time, you see opportunity within that. And I think that one piece of advice that we're giving to everyone is to find your entrepreneurial spirit in all of this, because it's that entrepreneurial spirit that's going to get you through a time like this, because you do need to see opportunity where it might initially look like there isn't any. You do need to have optimism where it does not seem like you should be able to find some. So that entrepreneurial spirit is really going to serve you well, because nothing's off, as Scott just said, in that true entrepreneurial spirit, nothing's off the table. You might look at something that might seem silly at first and then turns out to be something very real. And so you look at everything. Entrepreneurs generally move quickly, so you're able to entertain ideas quickly and not have to ignore them. So I would say that you have to know who you are, of course, look at who you are and know what your strengths and your weaknesses are, but also be able to lift your head up and see who you might be, as opposed to being stuck only in the moment. You really have to be able to do. Business people are always, if you're going to be successful, you have to be able to do parallel tracks. And this is certainly a time of working on parallel tracks. You may have one idea you're going to push forward that never happens, but you got to give it some energy in the beginning till you know it's not the right track. So you have those various, parallel tracks going at the same time. And that ability and the ability to actually believe in each of them and move them forward is part of that entrepreneurial spirit. And that's a part of talking to others, so that you can get those new ideas and be able to filter those new ideas through some people that you trust.
All right, good. And as we're seeing a lot of the economic reports coming out, primarily everybody's watching the unemployment report, that it's still higher than it's ever been seen in decades, but we always seem to be just below what their predictions are going to be, which is good, but it's still millions and millions of people who are searching for work. How do you balance this internal strategizing, adjusting your sales as a business, and the getting people in your organization back to work or keeping people employed, and just balance that entrepreneurial time to take a step and time to keep the current situation going and what's working? How do you balance that counter tension?
I think there's a balance in sort of three different things. You have to balance. You have to take care of yourself first, because you have to have the energy and the fortitude to continue. You have to take care of the business, and that's got several pieces to it. And then you have to take care of team. And I'm reminding myself every day to dedicate a certain amount to reaching out to staff. And also, I'm trying to be their champion in terms of looking for unemployment claims, those that we have had to lay off who have not been answered yet and are falling into that sort of depression about it, is reaching out to them and discussing it and trying to find them to have paths that they can get answers, because that's what people need. And then talking creatively about what else can you do? What else are you doing in your life? Who are you talking to? Who are you getting help from? That kind of thing, but not letting them fall off the table during a time like that. That is really important, because they're ultimately the energy that are going to bring you back and that are going to make you great.
Right.
So you need to make sure that they're taking care of themselves and you're helping to take care of them, for sure.
Good.
Yeah, that's a great point. If I could add, it's the hardest thing to do is during these phenomenons, you're worried about your business as an entrepreneur. You're worried about the continuity of your business. You're worried about keeping your key employees. You're worried about keeping all your employees. The last thing you may be thinking about is communicating with them and taking the time to do that. Maryann is so right. It's like your people are what's going to bring you back. Take the time and do the uncomfortable thing. Have those difficult conversations. You don't have to have answers. So what I've found with colleagues is you don't have to have answers. They want to hear from you. They just want to hear, hey, look, we're working on it. Look, we'll get through this. We're not exactly sure how. But here's what I would suggest for those of you that are anxious and nervous is there is a great book out there called Bounce by Keith McFarland. And that book is amazing. We have used it at ConnectWise several times to get us through tough times, tough business cycles. I highly recommend that book. I think that book will make all the difference. Basically, what it says is, in times of great change like this, I'll give you the executive summary. In times of great change like this, you need a plan. All of your people are going to have change anxiety. Hey, everything's changing. Oh, everything's changing. I'm nervous. What's going on? This is crazy. The world is falling apart. When those things happen, the best thing you can do for your colleagues is to have a plan to come back into business, to have a plan on how you're going to attack that, and then get them busy working on that plan. So I know that's a tall order. I just asked you to do a lot of things, but that's how you're going to survive, is changing their anxiety about change into anxiety around the performance that they need to create inside your business to bring you guys back, right? So it's everybody's job to bring the business back, and you want to get your team fired up about that.
So Arnie, what I'm hearing, go ahead, Scott.
Let me add to you're so spot on. The most important people to you right now are your employees. They are why you've been successful. They have why you've grown it. I mean, even when I had a company, I had 30 or 40 employees. So at the end, when we had hundreds of employees, it's all about your employees. They are and let me make one more point about the communication with Arnie and Maryann. Talk about you as a leader. Right now, you can't pay people, the traditional dollars or the money, the paychecks and all that. But you need to make sure that you're showing them how to apply for unemployment. You're showing them how to get the extra benefits. Because a lot of your people obviously don't have the wherewithal or the educational background or the skills to be able to find this. So your job is to get them through this as much as you can do. So if you got a food supplier, maybe they can pull the truck up and you can sell food at them wholesale while they're going through this, and have your own food things if you're retailers or whatever. But most importantly, educate them on how to get through this, because without them, if they're not there when you want to reopen, you're out of business. So you have to, they are your kids. That's like I always thought, having employees like having kids. You have to educate them, train them, be there. They're looking for you for help. And lots of these companies, you can't pay them because you have no revenues coming in or not having, but you can sure help them get through this with other means of all this government money that's happening, all this money. A lot of them saying, I just can't do it. A lot of them might be struggling doing technology, get on a computer and do it. So your job is to walk them through that. So have a half hour, half a day, a week, training them on what they need to do, where they can find food, all those type of things, and talk to them all about, but your job is to help them get through this, because if they're not there, when you come through this, you're not in business. So remember that. So important to you.
Yeah, unemployment may be high right now, which obviously all of us want to see that change. But as the economy starts to come back, companies are going to be hiring. Workers are going to look for opportunities to improve their situation where they were. So it's up to taking care of the people now. So you definitely keep your team intact. Arnie, going back to something you said, about developing a plan to how to get back. Everybody started 2020 with a plan, hopefully. Had a plan, had a strategy, had something they wanted to see done this year. This shelter at home, the coronavirus has put all those plans on the shelf. So what am I hearing you say is we need to develop a plan on how to get back to our plan, and then how to make that work with adjustments.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is with this huge change, I won't say you throw your plan out, but you do. You kind of throw your plan out. I mean, you've got to say, look, the world's changed just now. It's not going to be the way that my plan anticipated it to be. Your plan has to change. Right. So I would be bold enough to say whatever we had for a plan, we can pretty much scrap. It depends on the industry you're in. So for instance, in a cloud-based software company like ConnectWise, it's basically going to be a whole of 2 months of revenue. And a lot of the companies that we deal with will go out of business, and we'll have to deal with that, right? So it'll be lost revenue for us. So what are we doing? Our plan says our whole job is to support our customer base, is to educate them, is to try and keep these technology solution providers alive. And so in a very, very strange way, it's a great comment on humanity and the fact that we are really willing to help each other and work with each other. And I'm seeing some pretty amazing things I haven't seen in a very long time from human behavior that are very, very encouraging. We do play nicely together when we have to. Yeah. And so I would simply say, be bold enough to throw your plan out because the world has changed. Good. The main thing is focus on what you got to do right now to survive. Because the plan right now it's not about what happens 12 months from now. It's about what do you do day to day right now to stay alive. And so that's why the business plan's got to go short term, focus on the next month, focus on your colleagues, focus on keeping them whole. Think about the assets that you want to still have when this whole thing's over. Well, that's your colleagues / employees, your restaurant. And I like what Scott said too. It's like, I would be knocking on every landlord's door going, hey, I can't pay the rent, or I'll pay you 1/3 of the rent, or I'll pay you half the rent, or I won't pay you any rent for 3 months. I would definitely be having all of those kinds of discussions. So that should be part of your plan, right? So it's a very tactical plan that you got to put in place right now.
Good. And I would just add I would agree. I'd be bold enough to ignore that plan that you had for 2020, because if you don't, you might mix the greatest thing that you could be doing because you're involved in trying to get back to that plan. And if you're really going to think about this with an entrepreneurial spirit again, you can think beyond all of that. Now, you may pull some pieces back at that point in time, but you can do that because that plan's there and you've already discussed it with everyone. So you can say, remember this piece of the old plan? That's still going to be useful. But right now, you need to do something very different because you're in it. And you need to look up and make sure that you're not missing something else by being bold. And I think your comments about humanity, don't cut off the idea that things could be fabulously different in the future. And so, and what are those great things that make you feel good and make your employees feel good right now that are happening because you're caring for one another? And what of that could you bring forward? So I love that, Arnie. Love that.
Good. Very good. So one question kind of related with all this, how do we get back to work without going too early and putting our colleagues and our employees at risk? And how would you make that kind of judgment decision within your organization?
I'll put just this thought out there. It was kind of how we started the chamber board meeting this morning, Bob, and talking about the fact that, we have to think about different things, but maybe the first thing this is a health crisis first. Okay, the health crisis started and then it created a business and an economic crisis. And so I think we have to keep that in mind from thinking about the health crisis. Those that are dealing with it personally or within their very close personal realm, it is a very real thing. Those that are dealing with it as their job, as how they create commerce and hospitals, et cetera, are dealing with it as a very real thing. And so I think we just have to remember to think of it as a health crisis and then an economic crisis. That would be my thought.
Good. All right, very good. Our next question. So, and you've kind of talked about this. What would you recommend businesses do to continue to operate during this time? You mentioned think at the short term, think of the next month or so, take care of your people and take care of your clients, your vendors and contacts. What else on that would you all recommend? If you shift to the competitive side, how to position yourself best in the competitive world as things come back?
Well, I think know your strengths and your weaknesses. And as we said before, I also think, don't be afraid to make a mistake, right? Because you're going to make mistakes in this time frame, right? Because for all the reasons you normally make mistakes in business, but this time particularly because you might be trying something or situations might change very quickly once again, as they did in the beginning of this. But I think don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just know that, this is the ultimate pivot time. So you might have to give that up quickly and move back in another direction. But don't be afraid to communicate to your staff. We're going to try this. Hey, that didn't work. So we're going to leave it alone, and we're going to leave it alone quickly, right? We're not going back there anymore, but don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Good. Anything else on that, anybody? Okay. As organizations are looking to come out of this and they're developing those short-term plans and talking about what's going on, it's a competitive world, and our economy succeeds because you have competitors who are working to be their best in the marketplace. Arnie, when we had our pre-planning call, you talked about the coopetition aspect of success. Can you elaborate on that and how people can understand it's not an either or? For me to win, they must lose. It can be a mutual success for people.
Yeah, well, I think Maryann sort of touched on that, and so did Scott, in the sense of, your competitors. Coopetition is working with your competitors. This is the time for coopetition. This is the time for competitors to actually work together, I would say. Example would be any retail mall, for instance. What can that retail strip mall maybe do that makes them stand out different and unique? And maybe you're going to work with the people next door, and maybe that's the restaurant that you compete with. But it also attracts people to the area. So the whole idea is we want to get people back out spending money. Well, we want people to have money. We want people to have jobs. We want them to have money. We want them to spend money, and we want them to spend money with our establishments, right? So that's all just going to be a gradual and slow process that happens. This is a time where competitors can work together, though, in many different ways to do it. I know that we're reaching out to our competitors and saying, hey, look, what can we do to help our customers collectively? Let's just put down the little battle that we have on competition right now and all focus on our customer.
Good.
To elaborate on that a little bit, Arnie's dead on and Maryann's dead on, now is the time to work with your competitors. Now, a lot of them geographically or in your space too close or whatever, it's going to be a little more difficult, but you're one conduit that you can use to get information that competitors are doing and they're finding successful in ways that they're staying in business, and extra things is use the distributors and the service people that you service both of you. Remember that group, that's for in Maryann's, Cisco, for instance, in a Maryann situation, where they have thousands of customers that are competitors. And then you've got, in a situation, the technology, you've got a Microsoft, or you've got, people that Office or whatever. You tap into those people. They want every one of you to stay alive. So they can talk about what some of the other competitors are doing in the Tampa Bay or in Seattle or in Atlanta. So use them also. Sometimes it's a little uncomfortable, and you're going to run into some knuckleheads that's not going to want to share information or deal because they, but you can use these resources, these middlemen, these people, they want to keep you guys open, because if you guys go under, if everybody goes under, they're out of business. So use them too. And that's why I'm saying have meetings. Your accounting firm, your insurance firm, they probably have 20 or 30 or 40 restaurants, or they have law offices, or they have accounting firms. So use those people, because they are in there talking, they're in there doing, and they're going to pick up things. They're going to hear about things, and they want you to stay open. And it's a nice way to get the information without a competitor feeling if they're not willing to work with you, feeling too anxious. So use that resource. That's a connectivity. That's like being a member of the chamber. You're members of the Chamber of Commerce, so you can take advantage of networking and things that are working throughout the country. And then you just have to make it a little smaller in your own little universe and use that tremendous resource, up to the point of even saying, hey, I need some damn money. You want to invest in my company? I mean, don't be afraid. The answer to something is no unless you ask it. Depends on how desperate you are. But there's going to be winners and losers in this scenario. And the winners are going to pull out every stop they can to stay alive. And that's why they're going to be successful in the end.
Good. So when I did the introduction for the three of you, I talked about the successes and the entrepreneurial spirit each of you have had through growing successful businesses and selling them, having multiple locations. Maryann, as your business has grown, people tend to take that, which is all was accurate information describing you all, but they tend to think, wow, they've been successful. They've never hit a speed bump. They've never had a rough patch. Talk about the time, I'd like each of you to respond to this. Talk about the time you hit that pothole or hit that roadblock, ran into the wall or off the cliff. Not the experience of that, but the mental conversation you had with yourself on what to do after that. That's where a lot of people are dealing with this. Maryann, why don't we start with you and then we'll work around. But I think just how do you,
Sure.
How do you prepare for this?
Well, I think that I'm about to know. Did I lose you?
No, we're here.
Okay. I think that I'm about to really understand this more than I ever have before, because this is so very different than any of the difficult times that we've been through in the past, economic crunches, shall we say. This is, literally you're open on Saturday night and on Tuesday you're not. So I'm about to really find that out, but I'm trying to learn, from what I have experienced in the past. One of the things that I think is actually true, that, once you've been through difficult times, the things that you worried about didn't happen. And so the belief that this too, can change, and that this too will have opportunity in it as an entrepreneur. Example though, saying, anything's possible, and to follow some instinct, to understand yourself well enough and then follow some instincts and turn over, many stones. Ask anyone, as Scott was saying, don't be afraid. You really have to put fear aside here, and you have to be bold, and you have to be willing to embarrass yourself or fail or hear the no. Example, after 9/11 was probably for us, in our industry, was the biggest thing to date. And it was literally, again, overnight, particularly with our tourism and business customers, and who stopped traveling and for a while didn't figure out, how they would travel. And so you really just saw, no business. And it was a drastic change. We happened to have, an opportunity that we had a building, and we owned that asset, and it became a good idea to sell it. And I was working with someone who I thought was going to be a buyer, and, they didn't say anything. They didn't come forward. And then eventually I was talking to somebody else in business. He said, well, just send them a response to their offer. And I said, well, they haven't offered anything. Send it anyway. Act as if they did. And I did, and they bought the building. So, the willingness to do something that might seem a little crazy or even a little desperate, these are desperate times. And so you have to be willing to do that. So, and that, and taking care of yourself, whatever it is that gets you through, because you need to be able to feel strong and to find hopefulness and to see opportunity and to share positivity with others. So in order to do that, you have to take care of yourself. So I would say that. But yeah, that's a great example of being with your back against the wall and finding an opportunity.
So yeah. Scott, go ahead, Arnie.
No, go ahead.
Scott, I was going to say, you mentioned earlier the 2 times you were close to a bankruptcy. Obviously, that's a kick in the shin. What is that conversation you have with yourself on, okay, I'm not going to let this get me. I'm going to rebound from this. How did you do that?
Obviously, when you look at the end result, when we're all successful, and Arnie and I have been blessed to be able to get out just in time, I guess I can say that. But basically, we sold our companies last year. But our companies are going to be very, a lot of our 50% of our customers are obviously at risk to go out of business, because a lot of, and on my side was alcohol and restaurants and tourism and all that stuff. But basically, on your question is, I'll give you 2 examples. We had a company that was a in-store media. It was a private label coupon company where we would put machines in Publix's private label factories, and Winn-Dixie's and Albertsons and a lot of the grocery chains. So we were just humming along doing well. And we would have fixed a coupon like the private label bread and the private label ice cream, which is what chains want to do, is build their market share up in their own products. We were just humming along. We would put on the ice cream, you'd put a chocolate sauce sticker on it, and the bread, you'd put Jiffy peanut butter, you'd bid against the other people. Well, then we get notice from Publix saying, well, I shouldn't say Publix, but one of the major ones we were dealing with, and saying, hey, we're going to take this in-house, because we would split the revenue with that coupon. So we got the word that, hey, we're going to take this in-house and do it ourselves when this contract expires. And fortunately, we had lots of notice time. Everything was up on the up and up. So we said, whoa, that's 50% of our revenue. So we're not going to be able to sell this thing too well with 50% of our revenue gone. But we were buying millions and millions and millions of coupons from a 3M subsidiary of 3M for the coupons. So we went to them and said, you need to invest in our company. The revenue stream, the advertising revenue stream is going away because the chains are going to start keeping that, and the rest of the chains would have done the same. But now you'll have a built-in place, and there's no reason for the grocery chains to kick out the machines because they go buy it. They got to buy coupons from somebody. So now you have an input and a positioning. So we were fortunate enough going from that to tying into this coupon company, and we got great multiple when we ended up selling it. And that was their mode of taking it to other chains so they could lock in the coupon business. So we created a revenue stream for this enormous company, and it worked out really well for us, going from one night saying we're screwed to the next side, really turning it over to a scenario, one other thing. And then one other quick one, fintech, as everybody knows that fintech was my last scenario. And well, when we started fintech, a lot of the people on this call will probably remember, Jeb was our governor, Jeb Bush. And at that point in time, you had all the states, it was illegal to do EFT, electronic funds transfer. You had to pay through the liquor three-tier system, cash, check, or money order. Well, we got to this point where we could not afford, we were a small company, we had state of Florida, we could not afford to go where every state, it was going to cost millions and millions and millions of dollars to do this. So we reached out to our vendors, the Costco's. We reached out to the Outbacks. We reached out to the Walgreens that were selling liquor because they wanted to take it nationally. We said, we want to outsource this legal thing. You have lobbyists, you have legal attorneys, you have people in those chains took us, and now, because we couldn't afford to do it, we were going to just go to Florida, sell it, and move on. But now fintech, because of that tying in with those vendors and those people that benefited from this process, now, obviously, as you all know, the success stories, fintech's in all 50 states, processing more than 30 billion, hope more than 30 billion. I've been out of there a year, and very, very successful company. That was one of the more successful companies behind Arnie in Tampa, St. Pete. But we had to be creative in doing that by outsourcing our resources and taking one of our vendors, all of our customers, and saying, help us, we need help. If you want to grow, we need your help to do it. That's the way you got to think now. No matter how small that vendor is, they can help you somewhere. They can barter out services for you. You can trade them food services for maybe legal services or real estate fees or furniture sales. Right. You look at that, barter too. So anyhow. Yeah.
Good. So Arnie, when you hit a speed bump and growing ConnectWise, what would be the step back and thought process you would have before stepping forward again? How did you deal with those setbacks?
I think probably like most people, I didn't sleep at night, right? I mean, these are the typical things. It's like I've been on my back multiple times in the business world. And what I found is that it won't kill you, I guess, is probably the most encouraging thing I can say is if you have enough fortitude to just move through it and try to think logically, have a plan. It doesn't take a superstar to get through these things. It does take suffering, and it takes mental anguish, especially as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, because your baby is at risk, right? So that's really mental anguish. I guess what I would say is, and I think Maryann said it best, is fight the fear. You got to think logically. So I've had it happen many, many, many times. I cannot even tell you. If it makes you feel better, I'd say 20, okay? 20 times over the course of my 40-year career. So, what is that? Every other year, it seems like that's the way business goes, right? Especially as you're trying to grow and hit new plateaus. I just look at this as just another speed bump in business. I know it's different and I know it's catastrophic. One thing that's great about it though, is that we're all going through it together. That doesn't usually happen. It's a lot more pressure when you're the only one failing, okay? The whole world is having trouble right now. So take that and sort of let that I need you to get rid of your anxiety, I guess would be my answer. Lose your anxiety, create a plan, believe us that you can get through this, and then execute, and then just suffer through it. You'll get through it.
That's great advice. Recognize what's going on, see how it impacts you, and move on. Don't stay on that spot of anxiety and stress with it. That's good. Maryann, did you want to say something? Okay. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. We missed that comment.
Sorry, I said I'm just taking great advice from Arnie and Scott. So
good.
I'm listening carefully.
This is great advice. And one question we did get, Arnie, you mentioned a book early on. Can you repeat the title of the book and the author for everyone?
Yeah, the book is called Bounce, and it's by Keith McFarland. You can get it on Amazon. Now, I'm just going to say that I have used that book. I mean, I have given that book out in the business, right? I think it's probably one of the best investments you can make. Buy the book, give it to your management team, and tell them, hey, look, everybody's got to read this. I want everyone on the same page. We're going to have to bounce the company through this whole COVID thing. That's what we did. And it was funny because it became a joke at the business. It was like, oh, wow, things aren't going good. I guess we're going to have to read Bounce again, right? Perfect. Because it gave us all a nomenclature, right? A way to think about it, a way of talking about it. And the book is great because it's not a textbook, it's a story. I would recommend that book. I would say that's going to get rid of a lot of your anxiety if you just read that book. And if you give it to your managers, it's going to help them get rid of the anxiety. You all will follow the sort of format there, and it's just to create a plan, right? And you're absorbing the anxiety of your colleagues, right? All these people that are out of work, Maryann's doing a great job of this where she's talking to them. She's absorbing their anxiety. That's your job. You're a sponge. You take all the anxiety from them, and then you give them a plan, and you go, look, let's not worry about that right now. The change is going to happen, but here's a plan. So we don't have to focus on the change. We're going to focus on executing on this plan. Starts with your middle management team, right? And your starts with the executive team, middle management team, all the way down to the colleagues. And we made it a common thing at ConnectWise. Bounce was a known book, and everybody read it. I would recommend it.
Good.
Let me make one point with Arnie earlier, Maryann. The key is right now, short plan. Don't be thinking what you got to do, especially the more serious situations that people are in, depending on your vertical that you're in. But get through this week. Get up today. Get today done. Get the week done. Get the month done. Listen and talk to as many people as you can. Read as many books and things as you can. Bounce is a fantastic book, by the way. And just do that. But make sure you get short term. Don't be projecting too far out. Get through every day, and before you know it, when it comes out, you'll be ready to rock and roll.
Good. And a great example of the chamber, how we've done that. Maryann and Scott will know this. I've been a little resistant to the chamber going to meetings through Zoom before all of this started. Obviously, when the shelter in place started, we became very open to hosting meetings and doing webinars like this. And today's board meeting and the board meeting last month had our largest attendance on record because people are wanting to gather and they're doing it through Zoom. So we're getting great participation and great attendance through our events. So I chalked that up to lesson learned. I adjusted and we're doing it and it's working. So an organization that their business is gathering people together can't. So we found the other way to do it through technology and it's working. Our members are appreciating the things we're offering to them this way. And also, Scott, I'll give you a plug. Great ideas in Scott's book, 0 to 30 billion, that offers some great tips for strategizing as you're working through business issues and things that are going on. So another book along with Bounce. So as you're going through this, as you start to see things happening and coming back, what's a strategy that you would recommend a business look at how to bring your team back together, how to bring people back onto the payroll that you may have had to furlough and start to grow things back as we're trying to watch what city, county, state, federal government are all telling us what's right, what's wrong, and the different views that are coming. How would you recommend somebody chew on all this? Maryann, go ahead.
Well, in our world, this is going to be particularly difficult in terms of figuring out what local, county, state, federal guidelines are going to be and how we do this. I mean, our business is going to be so very different going forward. So I think for us, we're putting that aside for just a moment and we're thinking about our business and our team and what can we do in an immediate fashion. And so, for instance, you get a PPP loan, which is really about putting people back to work. I mean, that's replacing unemployment, right? That's keeping people employed or putting people back to work. It isn't a loan to keep for the losses that you've had as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a company. It's about putting people back to work. Okay. So if we use it in that way, then you think about what can they do. And initially, what they can do that you'll be paying to them to do may not be their job, because their job doesn't exist right now. So maybe you're just going to give them something to do that will be good for them, that then you're investing in them, literally. And then when they come back, they'll be in a different space, right? So when you have to adapt, they've already done some exercises to adapting. They've taken and done something completely different, and you've held them responsible for that. And so you're getting your team ready to do whatever that is, even though you don't exactly know what that's going to be. So I think that's one of the things that you can do immediately is if you've got in a situation where you've got those funds, simply put them to work for themselves even.
Mm-hmm. Good. Scott or Arnie, anything you'd like to add on that?
I love that idea, because Maryann's right. It's like the way that the program's running, you got to be paying those people now and keeping 80% of them employed, but they can't do anything for you. So yeah, I mean, and again, it's not really going to necessarily help your business, but it will help maintain your employees. So I love that idea. Make them all rebounce.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like we say, when you think about it, if you ask every CEO or owner of a company, the most important, and they're successful, the most important commodity they have is their people. And your responsibility is one thing. You have to focus on your people. And so by doing things like this, the business plan, but also giving them something to do. And I don't mind the devil's workshop. So you just can't hand them this money and have them give them something to do, but hopefully try to tie it into the future of where you're going. But even if you can't, you have to keep them busy, and they will. Most of them will have an obligation to you when things do open up to come back and remember who took care of them. So.
We've talked about how, people being the most important commodity, and we all really believe that. So it's the people in our worlds, our staffs, our teams, and our clients, right? So what can we do to focus on those two things, whatever it is? What can we do to invest in those two things? It's one of those things, as Arnie said earlier, is, what is different now, the humanity that we're seeing. So if we can remember that as we're doing these things, then we hold open that great space for things to actually be different. Right? For teams to feel more secure after this tragedy. Could we actually do that? For clients to feel more in touch? Mm-hmm. Could we actually do that? So these are small steps, as we're talking about. You got to do something today. You got to wake up today. You got to wake up tomorrow, and you got to do something. So these are things that we can do today that at least holds open that notion for something really fabulous at the end. Because it's going to be a long haul. It is a long haul.
And it's great for karma too.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. But this is one of the things I think, you have to think about today, because you have to know that it's a long haul. So you think about today, because if you spend too much time, as Scott was saying, thinking about all of that, it'll seem overwhelming. You can't do it. Like the quote that which I'll look up in a second, and Bob, and share with the group about the lion, because it's really appropriate.
While you look for that, as we are talking to our members and talking to businesses, I'm not going to specify any particular business, but some that have just been having incredible trajectories, positive trajectories for several years in a row, and going into this year with a really strong trajectory that has completely changed in the last 30, 45, 60 days. And they're thinking it's going to be a 2 to 3 year process to get back to that trajectory, if they get back to that trajectory. But they're committed to doing it, and they're taking that long-term view. Yeah, I got to make quick decisions now, but you turn just a little bit of a degree now, 3 months from now, it's had a big degree impact. And so that kind of decision process, that's what I'm hearing from all of you. Making decisions now that can impact your tomorrow and the tomorrow after that. And that's great counsel and advice. So Maryann, you ready?
Yeah, well, I thought I was.
Okay.
Hang on a second.
We'll come back to you.
I'm not. Yeah, here we go.
Okay. There it is.
This is a quote that I found and I shared with the chamber because it just rang so true to me for where we are. A quote from Albert Einstein that says, "Nature shows us only the tail of the lion, but there is no doubt in my mind that the lion belongs with it, even if he cannot reveal himself to the eye all at once because of his huge dimension." So it's a lion. We may only be seeing the tail right now, but the whole lion's out there. So we have to understand that and let that inspire us to do our work as opposed to stop us to do our work.
And I think we're all seeing that the economy is a lion, and we're all connected and interconnected with it, whether it's a customer, a vendor, a client, or a competitor. We're all working in this together, and that interdependence of our economy just shows how we're all really working together. So we're getting close to conclusion of our webinar. Let's go around, and what would be just some quick, if you had to go do this to this to this, even if you're summarizing what we've already talked about, what would you recommend somebody do, their takeaway from watching this webinar today? Scott, why don't we start with you, and then we'll go Maryann, then Arnie.
Well, you've got to understand, this is unbelievable. This is such a unique scenario, but there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. And the winners are going to change their mode of operations, their playbook. The winners are going to be more efficient. The winners are going to adapt new norms. The winners are going to join forces with their strategic partners and their distributors, products, work environment, delivery, labor scenarios. And the losers are just going to go back to where they were doing business if they're still open. The losers are not going to change, and the losers are going to wait for people to bail them out. They're going to wait for other people to come out, and then they're going to be out of business. So that will, the winners have such an opportunity. If you focus into the things that we're talking about and you pick at people's brains, man, just be a sponge. Anything that can help, and be creative, do everything. If you come out as a winner, I promise you're going to have less competition in every vertical. I can't think of a vertical where this is not going to hurt. I really can't, with a few exceptions. But bottom line is, you're going to come out and you're going to have less competition. You're going to be positioned better for the future. We're going to learn from these mistakes. We all learn from our mistakes, and you are going to kick ass and take names going forward if you decide to be a winner. And so that's the last thing I would say. And good luck to all of you. God love you, Tampa Bay. Yay, hey, hey. And I'm out.
Good. Thanks, Scott. Maryann.
I think that it is that you need to do the best that you can on any given day, week, to define your reality. Know who you are, but don't forget to lift your head up and look at what's possible that you might not have thought of. So therefore, stay open to others and the possibilities of what could happen in this, that there might be a gift at the end of whatever long haul this might be. There might be a gift, and you might turn into a person in a company that you didn't know you could be because you stayed open and took that input, and at the same time, just one foot in front of the other. You didn't ask on many days, you didn't ask more of yourself than putting one foot in front of the other on parallel tracks, right?
Right.
Pick those tracks, one foot in front of another on parallel tracks, and keep the fear in a box and take care of yourself and find some balance so that you can put one foot in front of the other and still be not only open to ideas, but open to others to be able to share your strength.
Good. Very good. Thank you. Arnie.
Yeah, I think this is where you want to be your most effective self. All the things that made you successful, all the things that got you where you are, maybe those are things that you really worked on 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when you had more energy, more youth. Well, guess what? Okay, it's time for you to be very proactive and to be your best self right now as a leader. All of your leaders in your companies, okay? Maybe another good book is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You want to be your best self right now. You want to be proactive, okay? You cannot be paralyzed by fear. That's not your job. That is for losers. You are a winner. You're not going to be paralyzed by fear. You're going to be very proactive, okay? You're going to be thinking about win-win, right? I mean, you can be thinking about win-win with your vendors, right? Win-win with your colleagues, okay? Begin with the end in mind, but realize that the end is different now, right? And the end is a whole different future, right? So think about what that might look like. Think about how your company can be better in this new world that we're going into, and how can you beat your competitors there. And then I guess I would say, you know, Maryann said it many times, Scott has, take care of yourself, sharpen the saw, make sure that you are the best that you can be. Get exercise, right? You've got an opportunity to stay healthy right now. We all have an opportunity to work out more or eat more. Try to become healthier as a result of this, because you're going to have to really, it is going to be 2 years, okay? You're going to be digging out for 2 years, all right? And the only thing I can say is, like, I go back, and this is maybe a little morbid, but I go back to these pictures of World War II, you know, where Berlin was bombed and all these cities in Europe were bombed. And you just look, people crawled out and they all dug out together, okay? And they all rebuilded. The whole, you know, all of Europe had to rebuild, right? We're kind of worldwide doing that now. And so it's not, you're not alone, okay? So focus on being the best you can, being proactive, come up with a plan, read Bounce, maybe brush up on 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You'll get through it. You'll do good. You'll be better as a result.
Very good. Well, I want to thank all of you very much for your time and sharing your insights on how you strategize and think about your business. I think this has been incredibly helpful. I've got takeaways. I like to be bold enough to throw your plan out, think short term, next month, and take care of your colleagues, your employees, the people you work with, as much as taking care of yourself. And you have to be in good physical and mental health to be able to deal with these issues and all that's going on. Being an entrepreneur is not an easy world. It's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of weight, but you can work through this. What we're dealing with is part of the entrepreneurial process and long-term where you're going. It's not the final part where you are. And be proactive. And you all talked a lot about being proactive in all kinds of different ways, from how you deal with your vendors to how you position yourself to be competitive, how you take care of your people, how you take care of yourself. So I thank you all very much for being a part of this. I think this has been helpful to our members and all that participated. I do want to thank those that have registered and watched this webinar and participated with submitting some questions and listening to our panelists. This has been another webinar of the Tampa Bay Chamber and our partner organizations. Stay tuned. We'll be announcing future webinars very soon. But thank you all, the three of you, very much. I really appreciate your time.
Great to share the time with Arnie and Scott and you, Bob. It was wonderful.
And if anybody wants to reach out to us, to me, whatever they need, I'll be glad to talk with them if they want, you know. So, yeah.
Reach us all through the chamber. Thank you.
There you go. Yes. Thank you all very much. Everybody have a great day.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.